use that
Yeah.
for mine.
Yeah.
Was there any surprises for you for the student engagement of what areas they clicked on?
Well, like the one was again the ones that were kind of almost kind of done.
Yeah.
Which I really found nice, because they got it really the first time. Prior lesson, they really kind of already got it. The only place that they were universally, and this is something that I've watched in the past, which is something I'm trying to watch for now, is on the conclusion portion of the outline. They always will leave bits and pieces off of that. So that was one place where even the ones that had previously done were all the way down to the conclusion, and kind of confused at that. Restate the thesis part. How do I deal with that? And that sometimes takes a couple times to get through, even after the speech is over in previous lessons. So we'll see what happens when they actually present.
Okay. Just making sure our video's still going to one.
Yeah, that's
You
cool.
talking to a blank screen?
Yeah.
What things did you do during the lesson that enhanced the lesson for the students?
I just think direct contact, immediate response, direct contact, and addressing the questions as they ask them individually on their topic. And again, since their topics are so personal, sometimes it's hard to apply concept to that specific topic because they see them as being separate. So, again, modeling, giving them an example that they could use if they wanted to, encouraging their own.
A lot of it was the immediate response and feedback. It's not like, okay, bring your questions next time, we'll answer them.
Yeah.
We get through the questions as we go, step by step,
Yeah.
and the immediate response to the
Yeah.
students, that really helps.
And also, a couple of them would they would actually do the erasing part, because again, this can be ugly, or they'll do a cross out. They'll see what they've done and they'll adjust immediately, and that happened several times today.
And that might go right into the second part of that question, which was what distracted from that. And so maybe that editing portion of it might have thrown them off a little bit.
Well, actually, that's when they were fixing it. I think sometimes it's also, since it is, they're not sitting quietly necessarily, which I don't have a problem with. Sometimes I think by kind of, sometimes we'll notice someone else doing something and maybe try to copy, which I don't, again, in this case, is not a problem. It can be kind of groupy, which I don't care about. And sometimes they'll copy they'll get the wrong idea. So sometimes it's just a cross out.
One gets it wrong, they all get it wrong.
Yeah, two people will get it wrong. And again, I don't discourage in this particular class them consulting the other students. It's just sometimes you have to fix it twice, and sometimes they just don't get how they cross over. The concept does.
So having gone through the lesson, what other means might you use to assess the success of this lesson today?
Well, besides the immediate feedback, the immediate the artifact, when they actually perform their speeches, to see if it stuck.
And they'll start giving their speeches the next class period.
Friday.
They're going to start Friday, they're going to start
Yeah.
giving speeches, and we'll find out how
Yeah.
well it went for the
Yeah.
first few students.
Yeah, usually the first one shakes it out, and that's usually where I determine whether the concept was received or not, by how that first person deals with it. Then in my opinion, if I've heard a couple times, I needed to teach that, or will need to reteach that before we go on further. And those students are not penalized for that problem, ever. There's always called, you have an advantage to go first. There's always an advantage. So.
Being it was the end of the day, sometimes you get those students and they're freshmen and they want to play
Yeah.
off of each other a little bit.
Yeah.
So how do you decide whether to pick up on a student comment and make it a teachable moment, or when to ignore that and just move on?
When do I decide? Usually it has a lot to do with,
Or how do you decide?
how do I decide? It's a lot to do with the kid, because you get kind of a feeling for him. And one of the first things I want to do in class is try to get a rapport as best I can with each student, and you can see how far you can go with that person. I'm still learning names, but there was, I don't know if you know, a student to my immediate left would be to your right, like second, third row back, who was messing around. And my strategy is to fire back, not rudely, but just, I'm paying attention, I know what you're saying, back to it.
Mhm.
So that's one of the things how I address that at the end of the day. Just kind of bring them back to it. If I can make them laugh, cool. If I can make them smile, better. But that's usually what I'm going for. And that's what this did.
And moving it right back
Yeah, moving it
into,
right back
to the lesson,
right
getting back into
and,
task.
That's right.
And that's what, with this particular
Yeah.
kid, I did a
That's
couple
what
times.
you have to do that
Yeah,
a few times with some of them.
yeah. And there's a couple of others we had that came up with too.
Right.
You know, again, freshman, end of the day, shortened
That's
school
right.
day.
Yes.
Not the optimum situation.
No, absolutely
sometimes.
not, no.
Okay, how will you, how will assessment results guide your planning for future lessons? So what we saw today, the outlines that they came up with, how is that gonna guide where we're going? Because you said they're already moving into their speeches.
Yeah. Well, on later, if you're talking about future, on later speeches, if that's if one of the concepts they get, I will adjust. Like, next one is gonna be an interp speech. It's gonna be a poetry interp speech. Well, if they're missing an important part of this one as a group, or I think I could have taught it better, we'll take time and do a smaller activity and deal with just that concept. And then, I'm not gonna point that out, but it'll be just that concept till they get it, then we'll move on to this next interp. They'll think it's an activity.
So just use that as reteaching.
It'll be
where
an
you're
activity
on.
reteach, we'll see if they got it, then we'll move on to the next one, which would be an interp, which will be poetry interp speech.
Well, this one was very higher order, thinking questions, but is there any way that you might think that in the future you can ensure that you're using those higher order thinking questions during your lesson as you're presenting?
On this particular lesson, or just a lesson in general?
In this lesson and moving forward, both.
This is kind of my approach to all the speeches. I usually model them, I'll do them, and then we will do a chat. We basically operate them in the room, and I'll go around, like for the interp, for the poetry interp, which is the next one, they're gonna have to write an introduction and transitions. And we're also gonna do that, and they're also dealing with poetry that they've selected, just exactly like this, they're selecting their own topic.
Okay.
And, but there's a kind of a general form that those follow. So I'm looking for form on that, and to see if what they've selected will also fit with what they've selected for poetry. What they're selected for introduction fits their theme. So pretty much the same approach with poetry.
Okay.
So it's gonna kind of reinforce that in poetry, then we move off another direction, so.
And what about, Jim, for the special education students? Maybe saw a few that were less than independent.
Right.
How are you going to use those higher order thinking to encourage?
Just to make sure that have them, they see an example, they see the modeling now. You write something down. How would you do this? You put something down, then let us check it. Don't keep asking, what do I put? What do I put? Let me see what you put, and then we'll go back and discuss what you put and see how you can improve it, how you can make it better, how it can be more grade appropriate, grade level appropriate.
And I like that you were asking the one student, well, what do you think?
What do you think? That's right, yeah.
And putting that back on him and getting his opinion before you
Right.
provided your own. So, I want you both to answer this one. What impact did your teaching have on students' learning today?
I thought, especially the students that I saw, they by the end they understood what they had to have on their outline, and they knew that when they give their speeches, they have to include everything that's on the outline too, because the outline will be turned in, and we'll be checking to make sure they hit those points on the outline. Otherwise, it's a point deduction on their speeches.
And also they are allowed, encouraged, told to use the outline as the guide for their speech. They use it during the speech. So they have that immediately see the purpose for it. You use this during the speech, it helps you organize your speech, you can look down on it while you speak.
Okay.
So it goes from being this activity to a tool. It immediately becomes a tool.
Okay. I think that might actually go right into where we're going at with our decisional questions is, what goals do you have in mind for future lessons to build on student success and skills? And I think you just answered that,
Yeah,
really.
yeah,
right.
what will you do differently or the same next time you teach this lesson?
Well, that, for me, that varies from class to class and the students I'm dealing with, how I approach it. I feel personally in this group I can be a little, I don't know, free on how I deal with them one-on-one. I think as a speaker in front of a room, even though I'm modeling public speaking, you can still single people out. I'm big on eye contact, big on direct contact, just getting right on them, you know, in a non-scary way, hopefully. To know that not only do I notice that they're there, but I care. They notice, I know they're there, even though sometimes I have trouble with their names, which I'll admit, right out in the open.
Well, it's new semester, new students,
Yeah,
and, you
yeah,
know, students
yeah.
you haven't had before, freshmen.
The immediate check of the work, when they're doing something, we
Yeah.
go by, we look at it, immediately check it, immediately give the students feedback. And the students appreciate that and they learn from that. It's not, okay, turn it in, I'll grade it, I'll get it back to you
Yeah.
later.
And they really know
It's
where they
immediate.
need to go tonight with homework
Right.
or tomorrow,
Yes.
so that they're ready to walk in the
Right.
door, ready.
By the
to
time
go
they
next
leave
time.
that room, they know exactly where they need to be for the next time.
And, also the approach is, it's kind of a weird, they get an actual, they can see it, so they get a visual cue. Some of them don't do that,
Right.
but I try to lean more toward orals. It's a speaking class, so they listen. So I emphasize that, but they still always get that thing to look at, whatever it is, in this case, a model outline.
That brings me to a thought. There's one particular student we have who has a little bit of a speech impediment, so what will you be doing with that, Jim?
He'll have the option of speaking in front of the class, and the class knows that they are deducted one letter grade if they make any comments, any criticisms of the student with the speech impediments, or anyone who stumbles over anything. They know, they've been told from the
Faces.
first day of class.
anything.
And Mr. Wood sits in the back of the room timing the speeches, and I'll probably sit in the front of the room watching the facial
Mhm.
expressions of the students and whatever, so they know we've got them from both
Both
directions, that
angles,
they're
yes.
not going to. And the students, if they're uncomfortable, they can give that speech too in front of a smaller group of students as well.
Some students just aren't ready yet.
They're not-
I mean,
they're not quite
there's
mature
a
enough.
certain amount of maturity that goes with that, and they just haven't got the maturity to go out and be in front of a group and handle it very well. They will or they won't get there. Sometimes people never get there, and a lot of times they do.
This is probably one of my favorite questions of the day. What additional support do you need from the district or from the principal in order to be able to do your job better?
Equipment-wise, I would love to have a wide whiteboard, but I don't know if that's appropriate here or not. I've got a postage stamp, it's a little tiny thing. It's a little thing. So far as discipline in this particular group, it's not been a major issue.
I would like to see a different mix of students between the couple of speech classes he has.
That would be good.
He has more than one section of the same
Yeah.
class, and it seems like we have all of the at-risk
Yes.
special education students in
Yes.
one section, along with general education students, but
Yeah.
then the other section, we don't have any of that.
There's like, no,
And it's,
totally.
I would just like to see the mix a little bit
So
different.
you're having kind of a high group and then you have this low group?
Yes, and it was consistent, it's been consistent all year. It seems to be grouped in such a way that one group is extremely easy to work with, and the other group isn't, and it's just simply because of the mix.
Right.
And I also see in a good mix, and I believe the mix is, that the higher operating students watch the behavior of the lower, will actually check behavior of lower students, and not only that, but they will encourage them just by doing it to do a little better. I've noticed this, I've seen this happen. So that would be nice, I would have to say that, yes.
And as far as like technical equipment, any software, anything like that, that would be?
For this class, no, not really.
Just a bigger whiteboard.
Bigger whiteboard.
More space to write, more
Maybe a
space.
bigger classroom, because you're rather
That would be nice.
crammed in there.
Bigger classroom would be nice, and also, like I said, I used to have this really beautiful wide chalkboard that they replaced with this little tiny postage stamp whiteboard.
End of the day, last section of the day gets, yeah, a little close in there sometimes.
Yeah, it gets a
A little tight, yeah, it does.
Yeah. After the PE
A
classes.
lot of those bodies in there, let me tell you.
Yeah, and freshmen have not learned that they smell
Yeah,
yet,
freshman's
so.
hygiene is,
All right, well, thank you both for doing this, I really appreciate it.
Great,
thank you.
thanks. I'm gonna mail this.